The thing that I keep trying to think about more is that I've had several realtors tell me that this is going on, and they're taking a risk by doing that. And I've had people stand up for me also. And I thought, that's really nice. That's a great thing to hear. And it's not everyone. And I think that was the thing. You kind of start out and you think, oh gosh, this is just overwhelming. This, it's just all this vitriol that's aimed at you.
Originating from deep inside the Rocky Mountains, transported through the power of the internet, and arriving inside your tiny earbuds. It's the Appraiser Coach Podcast, helping appraisers increase their efficiency, quality, and make more money. Here's the guy who makes it his life's mission to create value for real estate appraisers nationwide. Your host and the Appraiser Coach, Dustin Harris.
And welcome everybody, Dustin Harris hanging out once again with you. Thank you for joining me, folks. It's so fun to be on the airways with you, to share information with you, and to get your feedback. I appreciate all the feedback that each of you give. Your good words, your kind words, your not so kind words, some constructive criticism. I appreciate it all. Keep it coming. You can always reach out to me at theappraisercoach.com. Folks, we got a fun, interesting, I don't know about fun, but interesting topic today. Something I think that appraisers are dealing with, unfortunately, but maybe we can give some ideas on what to do about it. But first, I want to pause here and remind you that we are sponsored by DataMaster. Of course, DataMaster is the ability for you to save 30 to 60 minutes per report. That's quite a bit of time, folks, if you really add that up. The number of reports that you're doing per month and multiply that by about 45 minutes that you can save or your staff can save in utilizing this great technology. Check it out by going to their website at datamasterusa.com. One more time, datamasterusa.com. We're sponsored by OREP Insurance. OREP is the E&O that I use, and you should be as well. The great benefits of E&O. In fact, I was just on their website just a couple of minutes ago checking out some of their webinars. It's orep.org. That's OREP.org. Finally, sponsored by Alamode. Alamode, of course, is the software that you should be using. I've been using for over 20 years. They've been in business for over 30 years, 3 decades, helping appraisers to be more efficient, more effective at what they do. Go to alamode.com or call them at 800-ALAMODE. All right, folks, I want to welcome to the program a guest listener who reached out to me recently and is dealing with an issue that I think is pretty common, actually, unfortunately, I might say, here in the appraisal world. Her name is Susan Card. She comes to us from Oregon, Douglas County, Oregon. And Susan, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Dustin.
Super good to have you on. You've been appraising for a few years.
I've been appraising for 25 years.
That is about the same time. So I started in 96.
We opened our business in 1993, and then I became an appraiser in 1994. My husband actually opened the business. So we've been here a while.
Nice. Well, good for you. Have you always been in the same area?
We've always lived in Oregon, moved to Douglas County in 1990.
Okay.
Grew up on the coast near the Pacific Ocean in Bandon. It's a beautiful place to live. Douglas County is an even nicer place to live.
Nice. So are you on the coast? I'm not sure where Douglas County is.
Douglas County is on the I-5 corridor in central Oregon, about midway between the Washington and California borders.
Gotcha. Give me a couple of big cities that are near. Bigger cities. I've been through that country.
Our biggest city is Roseburg, is 22,000.
Okay.
Eugene is north of us about an hour.
Gotcha. Okay.
And we've got Medford south.
All right.
I've
got a cousin in Medford. He's a vet down there, so a veterinarian. So very good. Nice. Tell me, Susan, I really appreciate you being on. You reached out to me here a couple of weeks ago and had a very interesting story to tell. If you don't mind, let's start with that. Tell the listeners why you reached out to me.
Well, I do work for the VA, and about 2.5 years ago, a realtor made a pretty concerted effort to get me removed from the VA panel. She sent 3 letters that she had put together about how I was underappraising artificially underappraising property, and asked the VA to remove me from their panel. The mortgage broker who was handling that particular loan gave me those letters and said, you probably should know this is going on. The VA basically sent a note to me and stated that what she's doing is illegal and we're not going to remove you.
Good.
But it kind of made me, at the time I thought, oh, geez, one realtor, so what? But I looked at the letters and thought, well, I'll look at these appraisals and see,
Sure.
Let's go back and look.
Right.
And one of those appraisals I didn't do at all. And the other two were rock solid. And I thought, okay, if this is all you got. And she did that in 2016. The appraisals, one was from 2014, one was 2015 that didn't come into value for her. And I thought, 2 out of 3 years, that's ridiculous. And apparently the VA thought so also.
So let me back up for just a second, make sure we lay the foundation here. Was this realtor, I assume these are, when you say came in low for her, you mean there was a contract price, the contract price is X amount, and your appraisal was below that contract price. Was she directly involved in each of these transactions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
so she's feeling jilted. She's feeling like she doesn't have that appraiser out there in her back pocket that's going to rubber stamp the deals for her, and she's taking this personal, and she's going to take it to the VA.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Go ahead.
What she has done also is she puts in in her VA sales agreements, if she is writing them up for a buyer, that any other appraiser can do the appraisal except for me, and it's in her sales agreement.
Oh, okay.
Her argument with the VA. Well, I put it in my sales agreement that she cannot do the appraisal. And the VA said, what you are doing is illegal.
Absolutely.
That is against the appraiser independence of Dodd-Frank, FIREA, and actually Fannie Mae has an independence requirement, and it also violates that.
Wow. So she's actually putting your name, your company name, your name in the contract, saying that we're only going to do this deal if someone other than this individual does the appraisal.
Correct.
Insane. Any other things happening on that side? I mean, this is huge. Don't get me wrong, but I've heard of and had situations happen. In fact, I'll tell a story or two here. Anything else that she's doing to blacklist you or make sure that you quote unquote don't do this work, at least that she's involved in?
Yes, and more recently, there's a Facebook. It's a closed Facebook page for Douglas County Realtors, and several realtors have contacted me and said, hey, are you aware of this? And no, I'm not. And what it is they've gone on there, and there's probably 5 or 6 different realtors that are saying, oh, geez, it's her again type of thing. And I don't get too excited about it. But this particular realtor has put the directions as to what she does to make sure that I am not allowed to do any appraisals that she's a party to. She puts it in her sales agreement.
So she's really got a vendetta.
Oh, yeah.
She's got an extra.
Oh, yeah. And to me, I figured 2.5 years ago, I thought, well, this is the end of that, and I haven't, as far as I know, I haven't done very many appraisals that she was the realtor, either the listing or the selling agent in the past 2.5 years. And I thought, well, that's probably, the best because, I don't want to fight the battle. Yeah. I just don't.
And your worry isn't necessarily doing work with her because like you said, that's probably it doesn't amount to much anyway. It's more about the name brand. It's more about the disparaging remarks, the libel, the slander, and the illegal approaches that she's taking to this, right?
Right. And just the slander, she's a bad appraiser, the value didn't come into to the contract price, so she's bad, she doesn't know what she's doing. And I thought, no, I do know what I'm doing, and I'm pretty conscientious. I feel I'm very conscientious about doing appraisal work. I spend a lot of time and effort thinking about these, looking at as many angles, and especially with VA has a system in place that the realtors are allowed before the appraisal is issued to provide sales to the appraiser.
Yep.
What VA tries to do is put the reconsideration of value system in place prior to issuance of the appraisal, and just makes it go a little smoother, a little bit quicker. So they have an opportunity to provide sales that they believe we may have missed, or gosh, you need to look at this. And I look at those sales and say, well, okay, what did they give me? And most of the time they can't give me anything that would support that value. Sometimes I get sales that would, if they were adjusted out, would be not work for their benefit to begin with, and wouldn't be considered a comparable sale. And I think, okay, what are you thinking here? If I'm looking at a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house in a very small community in South Douglas County, don't give me 3-bedroom, 2-bath new sales from the biggest city in Douglas County.
Well, those are the ones you should use. Those are the ones those are the ones that support value.
Wait, that's exactly right. Don't just look at the sales price.
Yeah.
Look at the amenities of that particular property. Look at the location. Look at what it has. But I'm always willing to talk to them about it. But I think that's the thing that bothers me, is that they don't. This realtor doesn't come to me. She goes around and talks to everyone else and badmouths me as if I don't know what I'm doing when I do.
Have you had a conversation with? Have she ever reached out to you and said, "Hey, let's talk"?
No.
Okay. Yeah. No. See, that tells a story in and of itself. I'll tell you the other thing it tells a story, Susan, if you don't mind me maybe dotting on you a little bit here, is you said, I'm a very conscientious appraiser. I've never seen your work personally, but I can vouch for the fact that you are a conscientious appraiser just because we're talking. And here's my reason for that. Recently, in the last couple of weeks, I had a conversation with an appraiser who bragged to me that he has never come in below purchase price. And I didn't say much, but I'll tell you, that tells a story in and of itself.
I agree with it. I agree with that. If you are, if you've been in this business any length of time, you certainly are going to have come across times that you are going to, your appraised value market is not going to support the contract price.
Yeah.
And people buy with emotions.
Yep, they certainly do.
It's.
I
don't even know where. It's hard to tell people. They so much. I want to live here. A friend of mine that's an appraiser said, he was appraising this property, and he said, "Oh my gosh, it was sold way above what it should. Nothing in the market that he was looking at would support that value." And he went back to the realtor and said, "Gosh, why is this gal purchasing this property? It seems like it's significantly above where it should be in comparison to other properties." And the realtor told him, "Well, gosh, her daughter lives next door. She's moving up. The house is exactly what she wants. She has the money, to make up the difference, and she just doesn't care. She wants to be next door to her daughter and her granddaughter."
Right.
And those kinds of things happen. And then, if you've got cash, you can do it. Great. But our job is to look at that property as a typical purchaser and look at it as the market would look at it, and give a market value.
Absolutely.
Not a, gosh, this is, I can do this, or this is what I wish for, but how is the market going to view this property, and how would the market value that property?
Well, otherwise, why hire an appraiser? If you already know what the value, quote unquote, value is, and the value equals purchase price. And I've seen some insane comments from appraisers. There was an individual that I had actually on the podcast quite a while ago, but had produced a YouTube video that basically was saying, purchase price is value, and therefore appraisers need to get in line. And you and I know differently, but this unfortunately has really become a problem. It's happened to me. It's happened to other appraisers. I'll tell you a quick story. This was many years ago, but without getting into all the details, I had a very similar situation happen here in Idaho Falls. A longtime realtor who's now retired, but been around a long time, had I don't know about good reputation, but certainly had a reputation just because he'd been around so long. And I think people looked up to him. And there were 2 deals right in a row that I had done. I had done the appraisal on 2 deals, meaning there was a purchase situation, a contract price I didn't feel could be supported, and I stood my ground and understood that here's the funny thing, Susan. I think sometimes realtors think that that somehow it's easy for us to come in low or quote unquote conservative. What they don't understand is that creates a whole can of worms that, if it can be avoided. In other words, why would an appraiser purposely come in low? It creates all kinds of headaches, but nonetheless, this individual decided to, and this was before, social media was big, but decided to disparage me and, talk to other appraisers about the fact that if you ever get Dustin Harris, if you ever get Appraisal Precision, make sure that you cancel that deal and go with somebody else. And I want to talk about some of the things that we can do about it. And I'll tell you what I did in that situation. But, just recently, not a year ago, had a very similar situation in another market north of me, where I got a call from a realtor that I have a good relationship with, who reached out and said, Dustin, I just want you to know anonymously, I didn't call you. This phone call didn't happen, but just so you know, I was in an MLS meeting, or a board of realtors meeting rather, just this morning. And this individual got up and gave about a 10-minute speech on how to avoid using Dustin Harris or Appraisal Precision because you had killed his deal. That happened to be, by the way, speaking of family, happened to be his daughter-in-law who was purchasing a property, and it didn't come in at purchase price. The value didn't come in at purchase price, and so I think it's. And by the way, these are my anecdotal stories, but and I know that this is happening across the country, unfortunately, and
yes,
it's becoming a major problem. So, what have you done so far on the situation?
I haven't done a lot. I'm actually gathering information. I wasn't sure what I could do.
Good for you.
I talked to the appraisal board. I have talked to the Oregon Real Estate Licensure Board. I have talked to just some people that I feel are in the appraisal industry that I admire, that teach classes, that have been involved in the actually they both have been with the appraisal licensure board. And I called them and said, what do you think I ought to do? And almost across the board, everyone has said, you need to, this is an ethics violation as far as the National Association of Realtors. They've been pretty outspoken that blacklisting is a ethics violation, and I think I'll probably pursue that. And then also, I have been told to get an attorney and see if there is a slander or a libel suit there. And I figured I'd gather my information and see if that was something that I'd want to pursue.
I love the fact that, first of all, that you're thinking before you leap. I think many of us, you talk about buying with emotion, many of us react with emotion, especially when we know that our names are being disparaged. We obviously, human nature is that we want to defend ourselves, and we're going to step up and do that. But I love your patience. I love that you're smart enough to step back and say, you know what, I'm going to gather some information. I want to find out what my options are. And then I want to proceed, not because it's an emotional situation, but because it's a serious enough situation that it's affecting my business. And Susan, I want to pause here for a break, but when we come back, I want to talk about some of the solutions that we can, as appraisers, look at, because this is not an isolated incident. The 2 stories that I told, the story that Susan's telling, folks, I'm hearing these stories multiple times across the nation, and I think that there are some things that we can and should be doing about it. And we're going to talk about some of those things when we get back from the break. I want to first pause here and remind you that we are sponsored by DataMaster. DataMaster, of course, is the way that I save about 45 minutes per report. How? I'm often asked, Dustin, you talk about 45 minutes per report. Come on, does it really take that long to do the thing? Folks, I want you to take out a stopwatch and I want you to time how much time it takes you to key in all of the subject information at the top of page 1. I want you to type in how much information that you do on the MC sheet, on the top of the grid, and with your comparables. And I guarantee you're over 30 minutes and maybe a little less than an hour, depending on how many comps you put in. One of the great things about DataMaster is you don't have to limit your number of comps. You can throw in multiple comps, 14 comps, and then start to weed them out individually after that once you start to see how they're starting to adjust out. It's a great way to do work, very efficient, and time savings. Check them out. Go to datamasterusa.com for more information. That's datamasterusa.com. We're sponsored, of course, by Alamode. Alamode is the software I use. Why? Well, I'll tell you, the tools that allow me to be able to be mobile, to be able to work from anywhere, and to be able to do multiple calculations that I understand, not black box stuff that's behind the scenes, but stuff right there on the worksheet that I can tell what's going on. I can tell what's going into the report. Alamode allows me to support my adjustments. It allows me to be able to make adjustments simultaneously to across the board, put in numbers that they call it the smart adjust, that I can put in $65 a square foot across the board, and it will adjust for each of those comparables. And then I can tweak as I need to when it comes to the actual appraisal work and the analytical side. Alamode makes it easy for me to do that. Alamode.com is where you need to go, or pick up the phone and call their friendly sales agents at 800 Alamode. Finally, we are sponsored by OREP Insurance. Just went through a renewal with OREP. I don't even want to call it renewal. It was such a snap of the fingers. It was so easy. Literally took me less than 3 minutes to fill out the application, send it in. There was one phone call made because there was a question on my application. It was a little bit different than last year. And they said, hey, is this accurate? And I said, it is. We added a person. Here's his situation. It was about a 2-minute phone call, and then the renewal was done. It was done about 60 days before my actual renewal date, which allowed me to be able to put it in so that I didn't have any AMCs say, you know what, you're too close to the renewal date. We're not going to send you any work, which does happen, by the way. OREP made it easy. It'll make it easy for you. Oh, and by the way, I saved over $100 again this year over last year, even adding an appraiser. Yeah, beat that, everybody else. OREP Insurance is where it's at. It's OREP.org. That's OREP, OREP.org. And welcome back to the program, folks. We're on with Susan Card. She's out of Oregon, an appraiser who's had a little bit of a challenging situation come up where an appraiser, she's trying to be a good appraiser. She's trying to do the things that she feels comfortable with and come in at value. Not necessarily price. We know that price doesn't equal value, but sometimes when that appraised value is lower than the purchase price, you get some angry realtors, and sometimes you get some realtors that do some things that they shouldn't be doing. And Susan's telling this story about this situation where she's been disparaged, she's been talked about, she's been both on social media and even in the contract for future purchases has been blacklisted, if you will. And I want to talk about some of the solutions that Susan might have. Is that okay, Susan?
Sure.
I think this is we're seeing this more and more often, unfortunately. Maybe it's not more often than it was in the past, but we see it. And with all of the rules and the laws and the legalities and the ethics and everything else that both appraisers and real estate agents need to abide by, I think that this is something, solutions is something that we need out there. Some ideas, because I think listeners out there you're not alone, Susan. Let's put it that way. So one of the things is, I will say to you, I'm not a big fan of the legal route, except in a worst case scenario. In other words, I think that and I'm not talking necessarily about your situation. I'm talking in general. When this happens, I'm a much bigger fan of the road of least resistance, meaning, are there some social ways to take care of this? Are there some other routes that we need to look at before we look at the lawsuits for, libel, slander? By the way, those are real things. I know that sometimes people throw that around of, you've slandered me, you've committed libel. But, when you look at the legal definitions of both slander and libel, especially when there's legitimate financial damages. And I think that in your situation for sure, that you could show that. In other words, if you have an opportunity to do an appraisal and to be paid for that appraisal, yet an agent sticks their neck out and starts, gawking at you and your situation and your company and your license and starts to drive that work away from you, I think you have a real case of, and I know there's a little difference between libel and slander. And I'm not a lawyer, certainly, and I don't know, for sure the difference between the two, but I certainly think that you've got a case there. But in my recommendation is that appraisers, maybe not necessarily in your situation, Susan, but when this first happens, I think the best case scenario is, and this can be a hard thing. It can be difficult to push through this, because if you've got somebody saying bad things about you, it's not the easiest thing to approach them. But I think that we start there. Start with the agent. And I've had, the first story that I told you about, the one here in Idaho Falls, that's how I handled the situation. I reached out to this individual and I said, Rich, that's not his real name, but Rich, let's go to lunch. And I think it shocked him, first of all, that I called him. Second of all, I don't think it was expected that I would invite him to lunch. I paid for lunch on purpose. I didn't want him to feel, this is a friendly conversation where I sat down and we had a meal and we broke bread together and we had a conversation about him and his grandkids and his hobbies and how long he's been in the business and everything else. And I said near the end of the meal, I said, Rich, I know it's kind of probably strange that I've reached out to you. I know that, that there's been some talk out there that you haven't been real happy with some of the work that I've performed, but I just wanted to sit down and talk face to face. I've found that if people have differences, that the best way to take care of that is face to face, man to man, if you will, man to woman, woman to woman, whatever the case may be, but adult to adult, let's put it that way. And he kind of chuckled and he said, yeah, you're right. I haven't been real happy with your work. And we had a nice conversation of about 10, 15 minutes. And at the end of that conversation, I think he understood my position. I think he understood. One of the things I said to him was, Rich, do you think that I want to come in below purchase price? I mean, how does that serve me in any good way? And he kind of sat back and said, well, yeah, I kind of see where you're coming from. And we went through this process of conversation. Now, did that end the problem? Not necessarily with him. I think that he still was probably standoffish, but he certainly wasn't out there disparaging my name as well. So, Susan, let me ask you a question. What do you think would happen if you reached out to this agent at this point? And maybe it's beyond that at this point. It seems, when you're putting stuff in contracts and on social media, maybe that's not the case. But in your estimation, if you reached out to this agent and said, let's go have lunch, what do you think would be the outcome there?
I can't imagine that she would.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I would seriously doubt if I had an appraisal order from her and I called her to set it up and it's hello, okay, goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
There's no communication there at all. And no, I can't imagine.
Yeah. I think you're probably right.
Go to lunch with me.
I think you're probably right. The next step that I would say that appraisers could take, and again, I'm trying to take the path of least resistance, if you will. It can get very, very financially difficult and time consuming to go through a lawsuit or some type of legal action. Though, again, I'm not saying that's off the table. I definitely think that needs to be on the table. But what about going to the managing broker? Is this individual a broker? Or do they have a managing broker? In other words,
she owns her own business.
Okay, so she is the managing broker. So saying, "Hey, can I talk to the supervisor?" She says, "Yeah, I'm right here. Let's talk." Right.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I throw that out there, not necessarily for your situation in particular, Susan, but again, there's lots of listeners here. There's lots of appraisers that I think are going through similar situations or have been or will in the future. And I want this episode to be kind of a library, if you will, of choices that can be made. I do know appraisers that have gone to managing brokers who have, in a very professional. Okay, we're not stomping up and down and complaining and saying he's pointing fingers at me, but simply in a professional way, sitting down with a managing broker and saying, "Listen, I have a situation that's come up with one of your agents. I just want you to be aware of it, and handle it on your side. It is an issue. Obviously, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't. But really, the broker should know better. The broker should know and understand the ethics side, and hopefully be." A good liaison between you and that agent. So, one of the other things I would throw out there, Susan, is to remember, so we talk about real estate agents, and there's real estate agents, they're sales agents, if you will, both on the listing and the selling side, but they are realtors. Okay, and we often mix those two terms, and we say, I'm a realtor, for example, and I think the general public understands, or at least has this understanding that a realtor is a sales agent. But really, when you look at the definition of a realtor is a member of the National Association of Realtors. I assume you're a member of the National Association of Realtors, right, Susan?
Yes, I am.
So one of the things that I point out here, and I think it's important to understand, is most appraisers are realtors as well. Very few appraisers are not realtors because very few appraisers are not members of the National Association of Realtors. If you're a member of your local board, which most of you are, you by default will typically be a member of the National Association of Realtors. And I think it's important to go to that. So if you don't mind, and I know this gets a little bit technical for an audio, but if listeners will indulge me for just a second, I want to actually read from the Realtor Code of Ethics. Okay, and just notice if any of these things pop out to you, Susan, as being a situation. Again, you're a realtor. Okay, I want to make that very clear. Appraisers are realtors. Sales agents are realtors. You're both members of the same code of ethics. Okay, Article 15 of the Realtor Code of Ethics states that realtors shall not knowingly or recklessly make false or misleading statements about other real estate professionals, their businesses, or their business practices. Okay. It goes on to say realtors shall not knowingly or recklessly file false or unfounded ethics complaints. And finally, the obligation to refrain from making false or misleading statements about other real estate professionals, their businesses, and their business practices includes the duty to not knowingly or recklessly publish, repeat, retransmit, or republish false or misleading statements by others. The duty applies whether false or misleading statements are repeated in person, in writing, by technological means, i.e. the internet, or by any other means. Sounds like you've got a case there for an ethics violation there, Susan.
I think so. I do. I think we do.
Yeah.
Or I do anyway.
Yeah,
yes.
I think you do.
And like I said, that's one of the things that I am hoping to accomplish. And not that I wanted to go down this road to begin with.
We never do. We never do.
And, it's the thing that I keep trying to think about more is that I've had several realtors tell me that this is going on, and they're taking a risk by doing that. And I've had people stand up for me also. And I thought, that's really nice. That's a great thing to hear. And it's not everyone. And I think that was the thing. You kind of start out and you think, oh gosh, this is just overwhelming. It's just all this vitriol that's aimed at you. Mm-hmm. And then you step back and you take another look and you think, it's just a few people, but it's ongoing.
But it's a few vocal people, and it's something you can't step back and just let happen, in my opinion. I think you're doing the right thing.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Not at this point, no.
Yeah.
And like I say, I'm just gathering information, trying to decide what I'm going to do. But I think that the ethics is a pretty important thing also. The other part of the ethics is, and I can't remember exactly which it is, but it talks about, and the standards of practice, I believe, are different than the ethics, but it talks about that the realtor needs to protect and promote the interest of their client.
Mm.
And when you are so concerned that your client pay the contract price and not necessarily market price, whose interests are you really promoting here? Your own or theirs?
Good point. Absolutely a great point, Susan. And it's something I don't think appraisers should sit back and just let happen, because it affects your bottom line, it affects your reputation, and really it affects the whole purpose of the appraisal profession, meaning we are to be an unbiased third party that is going to report on market conditions and report on specifics when it comes to our opinions of value. And I don't think that appraisers ought to sit back and let this kind of thing happen. If it's happening, they need to step up. They need to follow some of the steps in here. And I would love for appraisers to jump on and just below the podcast here, the episode on the computer, to make comments as far as what they have experienced, what they have done, so that we as appraisers understand what tools are in our toolbox for making sure that this doesn't happen long term. Susan, thank you for being on today. I appreciate you telling your story. I wish you all the best, and hopefully you seem like a very, very strong individual and a professional who understands the importance of what they're doing, and things will turn out in the end. I absolutely believe that.
Well, thank you, Dustin. I appreciate you talking to me today.
My pleasure. That was Susan Card from Oregon. I appreciate her being on today. And folks, if you want to learn more about how to handle this kind of a situation, this is stuff that we talk about on a regular basis in my newsletter and the All-Star team. $9 a month allows you to access the newsletter both in audio and in written format, as well as join a private Facebook group that allows you to be able to share information about this kind of thing. So join it. If you haven't looked at it recently, folks, check out my website, www.theappraisercoach.com/memberships, and join us today at the All-Star team. Thanks again to Susan Card and each of you for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
You've been listening to the Appraiser Coach podcast with Dustin Harris. If you like what you hear, please give us a 5-star rating and post a short review on iTunes. For more in-depth insider information on how you can make more money as a real estate appraiser, visit theappraisercoach.com and sign up for the All-Star team today. Thanks for joining us. And now, get out there and create some value.
Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Test. Susan, how are you? Can you hear me? I can see that you're on. I see your name on the screen, but I don't see your video and I don't hear you. I'm wondering if, looks like you're not muted. Oh, there we go. Are you there? Oh, barely. If I really strain. Do you have a volume control on your side? Okay. I doubt there's going to be anything on Zoom. I don't think you can control volume on Zoom on the software. Nope. I can still barely hear you. Do you have another form of a microphone or something on your computer that you could utilize? Okay. All right, folks, welcome back. Have on the line Miss Susan Call. Did I get that right? Susan Card. I'm sorry.
Nope.
Let me start again.
You were close.
We're gonna editor.
I've
We're
been
gonna
called worse.
So am I. We're gonna start editor. We're gonna start right after the pause.